Welcome back to Tenderfoot Farms. Today I want to talk to you about walking onions. I don't know if you've ever heard of walking onions, but they're really cool. Unlike regular onions, walking onions spread themselves. They divide their bulbs, kind of like tulips or other bulbing plants, and they also grow a big seed stalk up at the top that have little tiny baby onions on them called bulbules. Those, when the seed stalk gets mature, the stalk falls over, those baby onions touch the ground, and then they reroot and grow more. And so your field of onions or your bed of onions walks just a little bit from year to year. So it's early spring, March. You can see how healthy these are. These grew through the winter. I'm gonna dig some up and spread the bulbs out so that my bed gets bigger. I pulled some weeds away so we can get up close and you can see just how tightly packed those are before I dig them. Now we're gonna dig some up. Here you can see I've dug them up a little bit with my Clarington Forge digging fork. Awesome piece of hand equipment. And we're gonna separate these onions apart and then replant them so they have more room to grow. Here we've pulled them apart. You can see they're not very big. This particular kind of walking onion will develop larger bulbs if you give them the space to, although not as big as a big bulbing slicing onion. But they make great onions for cooking, and we're just going to separate these apart so that I can replant them, give them some extra space. I'll make another video when the tops are set and they start to fall over so that you can see how that happens. Right now you just pull these apart, and then I'm going to replant them nearby so that they have room to make bigger bulbs. But you can use these onions year round. Anytime you want some, you just come out and dig up a few and your bed spreads, and so pretty soon you have a bed that's big enough that there's no danger of running out. Here you can see I'm about halfway done pulling these apart. I've got lots of onions, and this is just out of one clump that I was showing you earlier. Here I'm still pulling these apart. You can see just how tightly their roots are bound together. Sometimes it's easier to pull these apart if you take a hose to the root ball and soak it really good to pull them apart. You can see just how tightly bound those are. So I'm going to keep separating these, and then we'll put them in, give them a little more space so they can bulb out. I've got an example here of how they divide underground. If you look at this one, you can see that it's pretty fat. And then up here it kind of subdivides into two main stalks. This is where the bulb is splitting apart into two separate stalks underground, and it's growing a new plant. Eventually this outer sheath right here will fall away. It'll become two independent plants. And so you've got to dig these up every so often, 2-3 times a year, so that you can divide the clump, divide the bunch, and give them some room. And you can see all these onions I've got here. These all came out of one bunch that was about as big as this bunch here. So you get lots of onions and they multiply really quickly. Now we're going to plant them in the ground. I'm just going to dig up some dirt, put them right back in, give them 4 or 5 inches of spacing from each other. Nothing fancy, but I got it dug up and made a couple of things I forgot to add earlier, talking about these bunching onions. I got these from my local seed store where, you know, farmers and people with big gardens shop. best place to get good deals on seeds and other things. I think they charged me $3 a pound, and I just got these last year in the spring, and I only got 2 or 3 pounds of them, and you can see how much they've spread from there to there. These smaller clumps here are ones that I dug up and replanted last year in the late summer. And then here, as you get into these bigger ones, this really big clump, that's an original clump from last spring. One thing to be careful of when you're digging them up and replanting them is try really hard not to bend the necks hard. Sometimes they'll recover from that and sometimes they don't. Little teaser for one of my next videos. I'm going to talk about how to propagate plants. This is a currant bush in early spring, and it's just barely starting to leaf out. I just got these last year in the spring, but you see this little stick here with a leaf up at the top? That's one that I'm growing myself just by cutting a woody stalk off of the other one and putting it in the ground. So I'll talk about how to do that on a propagating plants video. We'll cover currant bushes and grapes. Nothing fancy, but I got it dug up a little softer, enough so that I can space these onions out in it. Here I've planted some of them. You can see I'm spacing them out, remembering to plant at the same depth as they were before, although they're not real picky about that. They're quite resilient, and as long as you get their roots and their bulb in contact with the ground, they'll be all right. All done planting for how much I wanted to get done. Here's a small clump that I didn't fit in. I'll take them in for dinner over the next couple of days. But out of that one really dense clump, I got about a 6 foot by 2 foot bed of onions spaced every 3 or 4 inches apart. And their bulbs will get a little bit bigger. They'll continue to grow, and they'll also divide. Excellent way to get lots of cooking onions. And they just keep on going. All you got to do is dig them up and replant them every now and then. One of my favorite vegetables in the garden because it's so easy. Well, that's all from Tenderfoot Farms. Please subscribe, and we'll see you next time.